We're glad everybody's here with us tonight. I hope you're all here to learn what's the catch, right? My name is Chelsea, and then Sadie is also here to be your second host for the evening.
Hello, everyone. Before we get started, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. First, only the presenter and us MCs, Chelsea and I, have our webcams and microphones enabled, so the rest of you can watch without worrying about your phone ringing or showing off your pajamas. You will be able to interact with the presentation in two ways, however. The first is through Mentimeter, which is an online polling tool, and we'll explain that in a little bit. The second depends on how you're connecting with us. If you're on Zoom, you can type questions in the chat box. I'll send a message in the chat box in a little bit so you can see the orange flash and find it. If you're connecting via Facebook, you can type your questions as comments on the live stream. Chelsea and I will be collecting questions throughout the presentation, and we'll ask them to Rob at the end of the presentation, but you can type them at any point, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can. If you're using Zoom to connect and find that the video feed of our faces gets in the way of any of the slides, you're actually able to drag and move those around. But unfortunately, that's not possible on Facebook. Finally, if for any reason our live stream is interrupted, please visit our event page on Facebook for updates. We'll let you know when we're able to get it up and running again as soon as we can. You should be able to find our page by Googling Facebook Science Off Tap Florida Museum, and that should bring us right up at the top of your search results.
And like I said, my name is Chelsea. I'm a museum educator at the Florida Museum.
And I'm Sadie Mills, Program Coordinator with the Thompson Earth Systems Institute at the Florida Museum.
We also want to thank one of our favorite sponsors, First Magnitude Brewing Company. They've hosted the Science on Tap many times at the brewery, and we're happy to have them as one of our sponsors tonight for Science Off Tap as well.
At the end of our program, we are going to have a link pop up that takes you to a short survey. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to give us some feedback on this program, especially as we're transitioning to a time of virtual events. We really want to know how we're doing and what it is we can do to make these programs even better. So thank you in advance for taking the survey, which we'll get at the end of the program. We would really love for you to follow us in social media so you can learn more about the different events and activities that we do. For the Florida Museum, that's at Florida Museum for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And for the Thompson Earth Systems Institute, you can follow us at UF Earth Systems. We do also want to share some of our other digital outreach efforts. At the Thompson Earth Systems Institute, we produce a monthly newsletter that's a roundup of all the environmental happenings here in Florida. We call it Earth to Florida, and it's a great way to catch up on what's going on when you don't have a lot of time. We also want to share with you our Instagram campaign called Know Your Florida. About 1,000 new Floridians move to the state every day, and we want to help them, new and old Floridians, get to know their state. So follow us at Know Your Florida to learn great facts about Florida's nature and natural history.
We also want to give a shout out to the University of Florida Press. If you're interested in freshwater of Florida and want to learn more about fish after this talk, this book is available from the University of Florida Press, and they are currently doing a really awesome deal for us if you use the code FISHES when you go online to purchase the book. And that'll be valid through April 30th. And so just to order, you go to upress.ufl.edu to buy it. So definitely check that out after the presentation if you're interested.
So as promised, you will be able to interact with tonight's presentation using a tool called Mentimeter. You can either use a tab in a browser on a computer or a browser on your mobile phone. You go to www.menti.com in that browser and enter the following code. I'm going to go ahead and enter it with you so I can join too. This will allow you to vote in quiz questions throughout the presentation and test your knowledge about Florida's freshwater fish. Now we are going to move the slide to the next in a second, but the code will remain at the top of the screen anytime there's a quiz question and the website. So you should be able to catch up. All right, we'll give you 5 more seconds. Menti.com, and the code is 268167.
Think they're ready, Sadie?
I think so.
All right. So to kick us off, we're going to play just a little game real quick to make sure that everybody feels comfortable using the menti.com and that we can learn some good jokes and figure out which ones are the funniest, I guess. So I'm going to start. So the game is Sadie and I are going to kind of do a joke battle, but you're not voting for Sadie or I specifically. We need you to vote according to which joke you think is the best. So I'm going to go.
That happens to be my joke every time, so be it.
I know we both have fans out there, so let's try to keep it fair. So Sadie, where do sick fish go?
I don't know. Where?
To see a sturgeon, of course.
Ooh. All right, that was joke number 1. Here comes
number 1.
Number 2.
It's hard to see if it lands.
All right, Chelsea, what do you call a classy fish?
Ooh, what? I don't know.
Sophisticated.
Boom. Mic drop. All right. So what do people think? Joke 1? The sturgeon joke, of course, or the classy fish joke. Let's see. Make sure you press submit after you.
I think, Chelsea, it looks like it's not connected. You might have to refresh.
Let me pull up the screen. Oh,
there we go.
There we go. I think the problem was
joke 2.
No, sturgeon. All right. Let's see, a few more come in. We're at 60. Oh, come on, joke 1. All right. I think you got the catch on that one, Sadie.
Whew.
Joke 2 is the winner. All right, we'll do it 2 more times here. So, how does a school of fish keep up on happenings in the ocean?
I don't know. How?
They listen to current news.
Ooh. All right, joke number 2 here. Chelsea, what do you call a fish who doesn't believe in war?
Well, what is that?
A pacifist.
Oh.
We got to laugh out of Rob on that one.
Gosh, again, joke 2? Come on, I thought current news was like current, to say the least. Man, all right.
All right, but round 3 is going to be where it's at.
Round 3. All right. We're at 61. You take the catch again. We'll do it one more time. All right. What are fish that engage in organized crime called?
Ooh, I don't know.
Lobsters. Like a mobster?
That's good. All right.
You got
Last
one?
joke. We know fish swim, and some can even wriggle on land. But what is truly the final fish frontier?
What is it?
Trouter space.
Ah, it just flew up. Man, I don't have the right sense of humor for this crowd.
All right, well, I think we've got a good grasp of the Mentimeter. I do have some fish jokes for later if we need them, so we'll see how it goes. You'll be able to use the Mentimeter not to vote on jokes, but to test your fish knowledge throughout the presentation. So keep your phone or your browser handy. And again, the code and website will remain at the top of the screen every time there's a quiz question.
All right, Sadie, you want to go ahead and introduce our awesome speaker for the night?
Yes, so we're so grateful to have him with us tonight for this virtual event. Rob Robbins is a collection manager for the Division of Fishes at the Florida Museum of Natural History. He is co-author of Fishes in the Fresh Waters of Florida, an identification guide and atlas, and his research is focused on non-Indigenous fishes in Florida. with that, we're going to transition screens and give him a virtual round of applause for being here with us. Thank you.
All right, Rob, I'm stopping my screen share. It's all you now.
All right. So I get the right screen here. That looks right to me. Does it look right to you all?
Looks good.
You're all good.
Excellent. Well, greetings and salutations, folks. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Rob Robbins, and I have a peculiar job. I am a collection manager at a natural history museum, and since I'm an ichthyologist, that means I manage a collection of fishes. They're mostly dead in jars, but there are many, many, many millions of specimens collected over the centuries, and they inform a lot about what we do as ichthyologists and what ecologists do, and generally the knowledge that we as a society have about fishes. And so with that, I will say that this collection is going to impart a lot of the information that we'll discuss tonight. A lot of it is coming from that collection. So before we get started, I was advised to say a word or two about myself and how I came to be in this peculiar job. And so let's do that very quickly. These people, okay, mom and dad, all right, Dick and Kathy. So boy, do I love these people. They're just good folks all around. And I'm very lucky that they instilled a love of natural history in me when I was a kid. And they enabled it a good bit by taking me fishing. They allowed me to have aquaria. Truth be told, I think they probably really enjoyed having the aquaria too. And pretty quickly from there, I ended up going on to do studies of my own at the University of Miami. Apologies, don't hate. I also did continue to go on to the University of Florida, did my graduate degree, master's degree there. And before long, much like mom and dad, I was in ditches and creeks and canals with nets or riding on boats, holding fishes aloft with a lot of joy in my eyes. And then another thing about our family that isn't quite so fish-centric is we're all dog people. We just love, well, almost all of us. Well, yeah, I can't speak for that individual, but we definitely all love dogs. So it's not just all about fishes in this world for the Robbins family. And these are my wife and I's current closest friends from the canine world, Ruby and Willa. And then also snakes, right? I've taken the academic route with fishes, and if I'm completely honest with myself, if I had been a little more courageous, maybe I would have gone on and done an academic thing with herpetology and particularly with snakes. But I think you also need, or at least for me, I need to be able to appreciate the aesthetic beauty of a thing without applying academic rigor to it necessarily, and snakes fill that void for me, and I keep and breed a lot of different snakes and really just enjoy them as the magical creatures that they are. So, okay, enough about me because we do have a lot to cover tonight and we are going to be rolling along at a quick pace. All right, on the menu, get it? What's the catch, right? The first thing we're going to do, we're going to have an appetizer concerning vertebrate diversity. Fishes are, of course, vertebrates, and they are an extremely diverse clade of vertebrates. And so we're going to talk about interesting facts concerning the diversity of vertebrates. But past the appetizer, the main menu is going to be about non-indigenous fishes, particularly those in Florida and the impact that they have. You're going to see a lot of photos tonight of fishes that I think are quite lovely. If they are quite lovely, if you agree, then chances are they were taken by Zach Randall, my colleague here at the Florida Museum of Natural History, also a co-author on our book. And Zach and Hallie Marchese have a gallery of fishes from Florida going online soon, so stay tuned for that. Okay, why do I use the word non-indigenous other than academics like to use big, scary sounding words? Well, I could use exotic, I could use foreign, we could talk about transplanted fishes, but we could even say invasive, but all of those things impart information that I'm not trying to impart. What I'm trying to talk about here is fishes that are in an area where they are not historically known to be native. And so the term non-indigenous doesn't impart anything other than fishes living outside of the geographic scope for which they are known to live. And all of what you see here in this particular panel of fishes are non-indigenous species living in Florida, established in Florida. So, okay, what else? You're gonna get quizzed. You're gonna get quizzed a bunch, right? And a lot of the quizzes are going to be spot on to what we're talking about. Some of them, though, are going to feel fairly random and extraneous. They are being shown here by my friend Billy as what is it quizzes. So these will happen. Be ready. we got to go fast because we have so much to cover tonight in a short amount of time. So when these quizzes come up, boom, they're all going to be about non-indigenous fishes that are established in Florida, but not ones that we're going to talk about in terms of their impact. Got it? Ready? All right, let's get rolling along then. Okay, here's your first quiz of the night. It's not a what is it quiz, but it's more with respect to the appetizer, which is about vertebrate diversity. Remember? Well, this diagram, what it's showing is that fishes are more diverse than all the other vertebrate groups combined. And I'm talking about described valid species. Well, what does that mean? Everything needs a little bit of an explanation. And people have been describing species of fishes and other organisms since the time of Linnaeus in the 18th century. And we've gotten really good about it in recent years and being very particular and very detailed in these descriptions. It wasn't always so. And so a lot of descriptions have actually been synonymized, they've been sunk, they've essentially been rendered as hypotheses invalid, right? Every species description is in fact a hypothesis. It should be tested, it should be revisioned, it should be revised, and in some case, it should be refuted. And so there are a lot more fishes named than we consider valid, but how many? All right, so here's the first quiz of the evening. Right, is it, I'm not gonna read the specific numbers, but is it A, 10,000, B, 17,000, C, 35,000, D, 43,000, E, 78,000? Here's our first test of the Mentimeter. I'm going to the next slide. Let's get ready to vote. All right, let's have some voting. Whoa, here we go. Look at this. This is impressive. We're relying on the wisdom of crowds, albeit the wisdom of people that might be drinking a little bit, which is good. We want you to be happy and having a good time this evening. All right, so actually in this case, the minority has it right. It's 35,440. It may one day be those larger numbers, and there may be about 75,000 names for fishes, but valid, it's 35,440. How does this rate relative to those other groups of vertebrates? I said there were more fishes. Whew, by just by so little, right? I think this number may come as a surprise to ichthyologists who have been touting the diversity of fishes for a long time relative to their peers who study these other groups. The peers that study these other groups have been just as busy describing species as ichthyologists have. And the way it breaks down for other vertebrates is there's about 11,000 reptiles. I think 6,000 or 7,000 of those are lizards. There's about 9,000 species of birds. A lot of those are songbirds or passerines. Amphibians, they're basically frogs. Okay, they're almost all frogs. Some 7,000 species of frogs. Then you've got some newts and some salamanders and caecilians. But those frogs are super diverse. And I'm not going to talk much about frogs. So that's the realm of Dave Blackburn and people like that. But there, within the frogs, there are things that are as different from one another as, you know, goats are to bats, for instance, within the mammals. And bats are indeed one of the larger groups of mammals with over 1,000 species. All right, so there's our 10,000 foot view of vertebrate diversity. What have we been doing as ichthyologists the last 10 years in terms of cataloging that diversity? How many species have we described? Here's your next quiz, right? And throwing up an example, a species that was discovered by my father in the 60s, and then myself and my wife, Mary Brown, helped him describe it along with 7 others back in 2012. So this falls in that 10-year time frame. So you know there was at least 8, but how many? 50, 600, 700, 2,000, 3,800? Going on to the next quiz. How many fishes described in the last 10 years? I'm gonna have a sip of water. You guys are probably having a sip of something better. Excellent. Wow, we have some confusion here. It's you know, there's about a balance across the, we're skewing more towards thinking ichthyologists are pretty ambitious and pretty hardworking, and that's right. It's E, 3,834. And for those of you doing some quick math, that's right, more than 10% of the valid species of fishes have been described just in the last 10 years. So next time you're talking to somebody about species description, species discovery, it's not a dead science, not at all. If anything, it's only now just taking off. Okay, now we're starting to burrow our way down towards the main thrust of tonight's talk, right? And we're going to talk about fishes in fresh waters of Florida. Why did I phrase it that way? All right, and why did we say what's the catch? Well, the catch essentially, excuse me, the catch essentially is that we have fishes in the fresh waters of Florida in addition to freshwater fishes in Florida. And that's because we have marine species that routinely come into fresh water, spend some important part of their life cycle here, or spend a seasonal amount of time here. And we have to include those in the count, particularly if you're going to do a book that's about the fishes that you would encounter in fresh waters of Florida. And then, of course, there are the non-indigenous ones that we're going to be talking about. So Florida is a nice, warm, tropical place. How many species do we think are found in the fresh waters? These are all lovely photographs of native species by Zach Randall. And those are the last native species you're going to see tonight. All right, is it A, 100, B, 223, C, 333, D, 711? Here we go. How many fish species in the fresh waters of Florida? Boy, it's a real, I'm not a statistician, but we're a pretty even distribution here, except we're again going fairly high. So Florida is Florida's just weird. We know this, right? Florida, right? But Florida is strange faunistically as well. The answer is 223. So, and that does seem like the majority have centered on that. And the reason for that, or the way that breaks down, is essentially this: 121 freshwater species, 53 marine species, and 49 established reproducing non-indigenous species. Okay, you should probably challenge me on the definitions here. What do I mean by freshwater species? In this case, we are talking about somewhat arbitrarily, right? Well, let me back up. Freshwater fishes are those fishes that complete their life cycle in freshwaters. We have included in this category a few diadromous species, which include anadromous, catadromous, depending on whether they go from the marine realm to the freshwater realm, or the freshwater realm to the marine realm to spawn. We got 3 in here that spend a lot of their time either in freshwater and or spawn in freshwater. And so that's why we threw them in there, because categories, that's what we do. 53 marine species are known to commonly occur in the freshwaters of Florida. An additional 39 or 40 can be seen, but we didn't include them in our book here because it was already 450 pages. So, and then what we're going to focus on tonight, of course, is the non-indigenous species, which are up to about a quarter of the fauna in Florida. Good question would be, I think, how did they get here, right? All right, and these are your four answers, your 4 potential answers. Transmogrification, and if you don't know what that is, Calvin will explain it for you here, just as he's explaining it to Hobbes. B, thanks Obama. C, advent of air cargo and subsequent escape, release, or intentional introduction. That sounds awfully rational. D, Miami winters involve throwing fish at one another and not snowballs. I did grow up down in Miami, so I'm something of authority on what we do in the winter down there. It could be that fishes are dispersed in that manner. Let's see what the crowd thinks. How did they get here? All right. I like that people are not too concerned with being absolutely correct, and we're having some fun tonight. And I will say, while I never threw a fish at anybody, we threw fruit at each other all the time as kids. Oh my gosh, we ruined our clothes so many times. We threw fruit that people don't even know what the fruit is. Carambolas, you know what a carambola is? We threw that at each other. It's just everywhere. It's laying around all over the ground, and it's great fun. And I love saying it because I know it drives people who live up north and really pay a lot of money for that fruit a little crazy, and they're my good friends. So, okay, yeah, it's the advent of air cargo and subsequent escape, release, or intentional introduction. Okay, and that air cargo is associated with our desire as human beings to have exotic creatures, right? And in this case, I'm using exotic just purely as an adjective to say something that's interesting, unusual, not something you're used to, not something you're accustomed to. And I'm included in that group. I have 5 or 6 aquaria at home as an adult. I had a bunch as a little kid, and I really liked having the opportunity, I still do today, getting access to these kinds of fishes, breeding them, selling them back to the pet store, et cetera. But unfortunately, in association with this industry, which is well represented and I think probably very well regulated in Florida for the most part. We have had escapes and we have had introductions, and that could be at the terminal end. It could be the consumer dropping fishes into canals and creeks for whatever purpose it might be. And some of these have become established and have created reproducing populations. Throughout the talk tonight, you're going to see references at the bottom. That is to say that I'm not just going by what I think I know. I've tried to research this stuff very carefully for you all. And if after the talk there's a paper you want to see, I'm sure I can get you access to it. So I mentioned that, well, we discussed that there's 49 reproducing or established species, and we talked about how they got here. There's been a lot that have been released and what we call reported, in that an individual of a species is found, but a population is never established. And maybe even a small cluster of a species is found and the population isn't established. What is it then that allowed those 49 to become established? What makes a successful invader? At this point, hopefully you have read A through D. You see also there is the option of E, A through D and more. And let's see here what we think about what makes for a successful invader, one that can establish a reproducing population in Florida. Here we go. All right, everybody staying hydrated. I'm trying to keep us under time. I understand Survivor's on at 8 o'clock, and at least one of my viewers needs to see that show. All right, A through D and more. Absolutely, yeah, a whole bunch of characteristics. As we do some of those what is it quizzes, and they're coming up real soon, you may see that those characteristics are in fact challenged by some of the successfully established species. And so it may be something else that we're not certain about. And there it is, just like that. Okay, it's the what is it quiz. We're gonna go quick through these guys. Some folks call it sling blade fish, black spotted butter knife fish, clown knife fish, Aussie boomerang fish, Kaiser blade fish. Personally, I think any of those are great names for this fish. There's actually a committee on the names of fishes, on the common names of fishes. Probably didn't know that, right? But this is academia, and there's lots of committees. We make committees for things. And in fact, my father served on that committee. And our curator of fishes, Larry Page, is the chair of that committee. So if your answer isn't the correct answer, I suggest, and you want it to be the correct answer, I suggest you petition Larry Page, not the guy from Google, but Larry Page, and see if you can get it changed, right? Okay, what do we think that thing is? Boy, people are confident. Some of these people are really confident. All right. Personally, I like, because Chelsea liked it too, and I think Sadie did as well, maybe Becca, black spotted butter knife fish, but it is clown knife fish. Good guesses all. Clown knife fish are big. They get about 1 meter long. Sometimes I'm going to use metric. Sometimes I'm going to use English. Most Americans still use English. Science uses metric, but we're just going to bounce around back and forth tonight. They get about 1 meter. They are members of the family Notopteridae, which are known as featherfin knife fishes. You see this little feather-like dorsal fin on its back. I'm pointing at it like you guys can see me pointing at it. This is all new, right? They do come in little, right? Everything comes in little. There's Kenny holding a little one. And they are established in lakes and canals in West Palm Beach and Broward counties. There's a hook and line sport fishery for them, and they are native to Southeast Asia. They swim backward excellently. They'll fight you on hook and line swimming backwards. Pretty crazy. Okay, now here we are, center meat of the talk. We're going to talk about published research and how it informs us. A lot of that published research based on specimens in museums or based on specimens that then got put in museums so people in the future could check the work, right? Because science, you have to keep checking, you have to keep testing, right? And we're going to talk about these two groups in particular, fishes established in Florida, and what the published research to date tells us that they are doing. And we can only cover so much because it's starting to get fairly extensive, this research, even though we still need to do a lot more and learn a lot more. All right, so we're gonna start with armored catfishes, in particular, these Suckermouth armored catfishes, one group, the sailfin catfishes, Pterygoplectes. The species of Pterygoplectes are sometimes diagnosed by the pattern on their belly. This may or may not be a reliable characteristic, but it's the best we got to go on right now. People are still working on molecular aspects of these species. They are members of a really big group of fishes, close to 1,000 species. Almost all have these suctorial mouths. And this particular group, they are real strong raspers. They have rasping teeth, and they graze on substrate biota, things like algae, periphyton, any other little microorganisms that they can get into their belly in these extended long guts. They're widespread in Florida. They're big animals. They're conspicuous. They're easy to see. They are also abundant, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about research on these fish or fishes, and maybe more than one species, in Volusia Blue Spring. And that research is largely published by Leo Nico and his colleagues. Leo's a mentor of mine and a scientist at the USGS here in Gainesville. And then we'll also look at some research out of Stetson University. So these guys can denude a substrate with their grazing activities. They also have been seen to graze on the epibiota on manatees. Remember, we talked briefly about what epibiota is. Algae can even include things like barnacles, because manatees go out into the ocean. They spend a lot of their life out there, estuaries. They bring this stuff in. Up to 40 catfish have been observed at any given time by Leo Nico and his colleagues on a manatee. They will graze on young nursing manatees, and the manatees don't seem to like it too much. This is still being quantified, but they will roll, they will beat their caudal fin, their tail, sorry, it's a mammal, right? Really big mammal. And they may even brush the catfish off on sticks and logs. And a concern is that it may come at an energetic cost to the manatees. They're in the springs for the relative warm water, the escape during the winter, as are the catfishes. If they leave the spring to get rid of the catfishes and go out into the colder river, what does that mean for manatees? I told you we can only talk about so much because of time constraints. There's a lot of interesting research upon the interaction between these armored catfishes and manatees. These guys also burrow, specifically the males. The large adult males burrow into the banks of rivers, canals, lakes, wherever they can basically find substrate that is, let's see, how did Leo put it? Easy enough to dig, but not collapse. That tends to be areas that are already prone to erosion. The males do this so they can have a burrow, a tunnel for breeding in with the female, and they have the egg mass cared for in there. They protect the egg mass. You can see from the diagram from one of Leo's papers what can happen to a burrow, particularly when you have these areas, these colonies with a lot of burrows. The water drops, there's less support for the burrow. You get bank profile erosion, you get bank collapse. Something similar to this is happening in South Florida above the waterline with iguanas. There's a lot to be studied here as to what this is doing to the aquatic environment, what it might mean in terms of rates of siltation, et cetera. Okay, a true or false, the only true or false of the night. And this is about the next paper on armored sailfin catfishes, and the last paper we're gonna do on these guys. All of these are paragraph headings from the paper we're gonna discuss. I'm gonna read them real fast. Ooh, I need water here, hold on guys, sorry. I'm not gonna read them all. All right, you see the theme here? Feces, fecal, fecal, feces, feces, fecal. Yeah, it's all about the poop with these guys, or sorry, the egesta, right? Okay, so true or false? These are all paragraph headings from a scientific paper. Let's go. What do we think? Oh, going mostly true. This is where you find out where your kind and seemingly trustworthy host can be tricksy. The feces fountain, I added that one in there. So technically it's false, but all of the rest of those are correct. I just felt like the feces fountain could almost have been the title for the paper. And why? Poop, so much catfish poop, right? So the authors found out that these guys poop so much, and the poop sticks around, sorry, the egesta sticks around for so long in the spring, and these strands of egesta can be up to 8 inches, they persist for weeks, that it has an effect on the algal biomass. You know, our springs are already getting a lot of nutrient load from anthropogenic inputs, things like agriculture, things like leaking septic tanks. The authors of this paper, Rubio et al. 2016, surmised that it could be that these catfishes, particularly because they're coming in from the river, bringing nutrients from the river, right? They ate stuff, they come into the river, into the spring, sorry, and they poop it out into the spring. They're talking about Volusia Blue Spring here. It's a 650-meter long spring, 20 meters to 30 meters wide. At any given time, they estimated, and this is incredible. Can you imagine how you get around to doing this? About 0.6 of a cubic meter of catfish poop spread out through that spring at any given time, right? If I fill up my pickup truck with a cubic yard of soil or rocks or whatever, it's overflowing. So it's a lot of poop, and its impacts are potentially profound. Okay, well, that one caught me by surprise. We're doing a what is it? A, is this a bitey McBite face? B, a dagger snout. C, a golden malinois. D, picadito. E, pike killifish. This is one where I have to tell you, it could be more than one. And I don't know if you guys can vote for more than one. So again, not trustworthy, totally tricksy. I do apologize, but kind of not really. Okay, so what do you think? What is this thing called? You guys know Bitey McBiteface, of course, is inspired by Bodie McBoatface. And Bodie McBoatface ended up becoming a submarine. It would end up becoming the boat that everybody wanted to be, but yeah, it's still out there. Well, we got a lot of votes for pike killifish. That is correct. So is picadito. Congratulations to the two people that went with picadito. Golden malinois, that one's near and dear to my heart because I do love me a malinois. That's Ruby. Okay, how's everybody doing? This is so weird. I can't see you. I can't hear you. You're just little bouncing things. I hope you're having a good time. Maybe we can slow it down a second here. People can get another beer. You can get a Shirley Temple for the little kid or fill the sippy cup. You refresh the gin and tonic. I know there's at least one person having a gin and tonic. Hey, babe. Okay. Oh, speaking of which, there's my wife, Mary, trying to catch a pike killifish on the right. And she is using a cast net, and that's a good method. She might actually not be trying to catch a pike killifish. She's probably trying to catch whatever's in there. But these guys are super wary. They only get about 8 inches long. They are live bearers. It means they have live young. They're related to things like the eastern mosquito fish. They're native to Central America and Southeast Mexico. And they live most of the time near the surface of the water, and they're exceedingly wary of predators such as wading birds. They seem to know exactly how long your net handle is. And so you need to do things like throw a cast net at them if you want to catch them. Okay, let's do the swamp eels, Synbranchidae. They're not eels. I know it's weird. They're percomorph fishes, meaning they're closely related to things like perches. You look at like a bluegill, any of our native sunfishes. These things are actually more closely related to those fishes than they are to eels. That is, they share a more recent common ancestor with them than they do with eels. We don't have the time to get into why that is. These guys are incredible survivors. They are amazing, amazing fishes. They're not too attractive, right? But beauty is in the eye of the beholder. They get about 40 inches long. This is the distribution as we know it based upon museum specimens, but they are really hard to detect, and it's possible they're in a lot of other places, and they are in some other states. And what do? Well, one thing that's been conspicuously absent from the talk so far is I haven't mentioned what these things tend to eat. I mean, we talked about with the catfish that they eat paraphyton, but swamp eels are predators. And a lot of people think about introduced species being predators, and it turns out swamp eels are predators of a lot of different things. I'm not going to read all this stuff. This is from a Acaras et al. Paper in 2019. Him and his co-authors cut open 700 some eels, found stuff in 350 of their bellies. That's what they found. And they also found that what they eat varies depending upon the time of the year and depending upon the life stage of the eel. So little eels eat different things than bigger eels and medium eels and so forth. These guys are super capable predators, and they eat snakes. Another paper before Sakkara, Shaflin, found the same result. They eat snakes. Oh, okay, things are taking a dark turn here. These fishes get introduced into new places. We are disintegrating nature. That's just what we're doing. It's what we've been doing for a couple thousand years. We're just shaking it all up like a snow globe and letting things go where they may. And, stuff carries stuff inside of it. So on the menu, see what I did there, for things in swamp eels, potentially, this is a gnathostome roundworm. This is the one that causes gnathostomiasis in Southeast Asia. It's actually a third larval stage of that species, and swamp eels get infected by them. And swamp eels get imported to the United States alive because people like to eat them and they like to get them fresh. And sometimes they like to take them home alive. And sometimes they even like to release them just as a karmic thing. This is all well documented in publication. I don't have the bit about what is known as prayer release, but that's a new paper that came out by Leonica recently. But to this particular creature that lives inside of swamp eels, what will I say specifically about it? The one that causes gnathostomiasis in Southeast Asia, Spinidrum, has only been detected in an eel or eels in a live market in the United States, not in the wild eels that are in Florida. But we have native gnathostomes, and they've been found in swamp eels that are at liberty, that are in the wild in Tampa. You're not going to get gnathostomiasis unless you eat undercooked or raw swamp eels. So you don't need to worry about larval migrans, subcutaneous larvae migrating underneath your skin and working their way into your viscera and eventually into your central nervous system, where all kinds of bad things then happen. But what else is coming in with, you know, the distribution all over the world of non-indigenous organisms? Something to study. Okay, what is it? How are we doing on time? We're going to come in careening pretty fast here. Is this a kitty Mitchell? Is it a quillfish? Is it a croaking gourami? Is it an Atlantic croaker? Is it a striped mohara? If this was a talk where I could see you, there'd be a bonus part to this question, which would be, what do these 5 things all have in common? And can't really do that, but what do we think this is? I'll tell you what they have in common in a moment. Maybe some of you have guessed. Are you still with me? All right, we have still some people voting. That's good. Hopefully people haven't run off to do too many other things. Croaking gourami. Yes, this is a little gourami. All 5 of those things are actual common names of fishes. So real fishes. Well done, folks. Well done. Thank you so much for participating. All right, croaking gouramis are little, right? This is not one that gets big. I don't think they have parental care even. They don't appear to be good dispersers in Florida. They only seem to be in this area around the Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, which seems to be somewhat similar to some of the native habitat that they are found in Southeast Asia, particularly in some of the islands of Indonesia and then to mainland Southeast Asia. Okay, moving on. We got to keep rolling. Okay, this is the dessert course. So we are almost done here. I'm gonna have a sip of water. This is research of my own done with Mary Brown and Ryan Crutchfield. Up until this past year or so, we considered that there was just one Acara in Florida. And what the theme is with this particular part is that we don't necessarily know what species we have established in Florida, non-indigenous species, right? When we talked about those armored sailfin catfish, Pterygoplictes, and the swamp eels, we're not even sure what species they are. And until this last year or two, we thought everything in terms of Acaras was this one on the left, Cichlasoma bimaculatum, the black Acara with 4 anal spines, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we didn't know we had this one, 1, 2, 3 anal spines, the Chanchita. Right now you're thinking that's pretty flimsy difference, but it's a lot more than that. And the Chanchita was introduced to the Tampa area around, best we can tell, based on museum specimens, year 2000 or so. Black Acara showed up in Florida in the 1950s, late 1950s, early 1960s, was published on in 65. It's, in all that time, not gone very far north. The Chanchita has been here 20 years. It hasn't gone too far south. We don't know what's happening with its dispersal, but these are very different animals, we think, in terms of their biology, and particularly to the climates that they're adapted to. The Chanchita is from southern South America. It's more of a subtropical species, found at higher latitudes below the equator. The Black Acara is strictly a tropical species from about 3 to 9 degrees latitude above the equator, northern South America. We don't know what the dispersal future is for the Chanchita. We don't know what will happen when these things come together. I talked about that flimsy business of 4 versus 3 anal spines. The other differences to tell these guys apart is this heavy scale rimming. I'm pointing it again like you can see it, but the arrow is showing it. On the nape of the Chanchita, the overall green color on the Chanchita, also the caudal fin pattern is very different. These are quite different creatures, but difficult to tell apart. This is that same map, but now shown as a watershed, which should indicate to most folks looking at it that a time is coming where these two will meet up. They don't co-occur in their native environments, so we're not really sure what will happen. Will they hybridize? How will the hybrid behave? We don't really know how the Cinchida is behaving. Will it matter? Don't know. Okay, so, and there's our little friend, the Cinchida. It's in the springs too. It's high-fiving those pterygoplichtes, if not yet, but no, yeah, right about now, if fish can high-five. Okay, the final question, and we are just about under the wire here. What is it? Only 4 options: Oriental weatherfish, fire-eye loach, speckled whiskered slender noodlefish, dojo loach. I will accept 2 answers again. Folks, are you still there? You're with me? All right. Wow. Who's the one person that, 2 people, 3 people, Oriental weatherfish and dojo loach. I do think fire-eye loach would be lovely. Speckled whiskered slender noodlefish. We have loach experts in our lab who are probably voting on this right now. So wish I knew who they were, where they were voting. Yeah, so dojo loach and Oriental weatherfish. Thank you for participating in the quizzes, folks. Okay, this is a little bit about the Oriental weatherfish. This is the kind of place where you can find them in Florida. They are also native to Asia, but to more temperate areas, and they're introduced in a bunch of different places in the United States, including the Pacific Northwest. They're tough customers. They're hard to find because they burrow in soft substrates, kind of like our friend, the swamp eel. To summarize, what did you hopefully learn? Just three big points. Fishes are the super diverse vertebrate clade, if only by about 569 species. And the way those herpetologists are describing frogs, it might not be for much longer. 49 non-indigenous fish species are established in the freshwaters of Florida. And just surveying the literature on 2 species, really just the 2 did we talk about the impacts, are unknown for the Acaras. We know that the impacts can be quite profound. I'd like to acknowledge, as always, anytime I talk about fishes in the freshwaters of Florida, my co-authors on the book of the same name, who have taught me so much about fishes in general. And the TESI and EPP team, I think we pulled it off, the first virtual science off tap. That's pretty great. Mary Brown, my favorite person in the world to publish with, my favorite person altogether, all around, let's just say it. And the work from home support staff, they have been wonderful. And also I want to thank you guys. It's been nice to have something, time, this creative outlet. It's been something that I've enjoyed doing over the last couple of weeks, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you. There's one more slide here. I guess now I have to turn it over to Chelsea and Sadie, or they're just going to grab it, I hope.
Thank you, Rob. Can you hear me over there?
I can, yes. Should I hit stop video?
Yeah, if you just want to go to the next slide and leave it there, and then
lovely.
Then don't touch it anymore. Thank you so much.
I can do that.
Everyone, I hope you're at home giving yourself a round of applause and giving Rob a round of applause too. Yeah, it's really strange not being able to see everyone that we love to see so much at these events. But for now, we have about 10 minutes, which is awesome, to do some questions. What we're going to do here is I have the questions here on the Zoom chat. Sadie's looking at the questions from the live Facebook chat. So between those 2, hopefully we can get through quite a few questions here. I'm going to start with one that was asked earlier in the evening, just so I to make sure I don't miss it, because I think it's a good one. So which of those exotics can you eat, and what can we do to get chefs more engaged in highlighting their use? Any ideas on that, Rob?
Hey, that's a great question. And, my wife and I, Mary and I, have been watching a lot of Alone on the History Channel. They drop people off on Vancouver Island and they have to make their way. You can eat anything, right? Cook it well, all right? You don't want to get anastomosis. But certainly a lot of the cichlids look like our sunfishes. They get reasonably large. Tilapia, there's 5 or 6 species of tilapia in Florida. You can eat them all. And yeah, how do we get chefs engaged? I don't know. You do need to have some concerns with respect potentially to mercury accumulation. That's not my field, but I think we've done tests like that for lionfish before lionfish were marketed, and certainly these guys would be a lot easier to capture. So yeah, does that answer the question? I think you could probably eat most of them depending upon how hungry you are.
I think that answers it. Sadie, do you have any Facebook questions?
Yeah, I've got one so far. You talked about early on fishes that live in freshwater and marine fishes and kind of where the boundaries are. And so someone had a question about estuarine fishes, and do they get cataloged differently? Where do those boundaries go?
Well, yeah, so estuarine environments are just that interface between freshwater and marine ones. And those environments experience a lot of flux. You have heavy rain events, they become more freshwater. In periods of drought, maybe you have more of a high salinity content. And the fishes that are coming into fresh waters tend to be of pretty strong marine origins. But then again, I don't think of estuarine fishes as specifically adapted to estuaries. Estuaries seem to be just that interface zone to begin with. So I guess the shortest answer I could give would be like, if you can live in an estuary, chances are good you can live in the ocean, and chances are good you're a juvenile of a fish that does live in the ocean as an adult. Or you might be a freshwater fish that's in the estuary right at its boundary during one of those drought periods where the salinity is low. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Before I go on to the next question, I don't know if you're looking at the chat right now, Rob, but you have lots of people applauding for you and sending shout outs and great jobs and all of that. So I just want to make sure you know that before we just keep bombarding you with questions here.
Oh, okay, no, that's very nice. No, I thought I got reasonably good. Oh my goodness, 170 chats. Yeah. I will try not to multitask. Okay.
Yeah, so just so you know, there's lots of shout outs, and we'll send those to you after we wrap this up. But you have lots of friends, so just
thanks,
know that.
folks.
So which of the non-indigenous species have been the biggest surprise that you found in Florida? Anything that's like really wowed you?
So those reported non-indigenous species, the things that just pop up from time to time, yeah, that's pretty strange. And what's interesting is that a lot of those reports and discoveries now come in through social media. And for a time I was on Instagram, and then I just got overwhelmed, right? And of course on Instagram, it gets a little confusing because I think sometimes people are competing for kudos or likes or whatever it's called on Instagram. And I got concerned that people were starting to actually get fish from the aquarium store, drop it in some pond, and then quickly catch it on a hook and line just to say, hey, I caught the weirdest thing that had been pulled out of Florida waters in some time. So I saw a bunch of stuff like that on Instagram and kind of got overwhelmed. I know that doesn't answer the question. I guess I would answer it by saying, I admit it's exciting to go down to these warm climate metropolitan areas and fish these canals and ditches that are otherwise, devoid of much aesthetic value and pull something really weird out of it. I don't really necessarily want it to happen, but if it's there, then yeah, let's catch it.
Great. I think that's a perfect answer. Sadie, anything?
Yeah, I've got one from Facebook. So I hope that our audience is from across the state and maybe even across the country, but we have a question specifically about Gainesville and what non-indigenous species might be in this area that are potentially competing with some of the native species.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, so if you either look at our book or maybe even better, if you go to the website from which I'm developing those maps, I think if you just Google specify web portal, Florida Museum, fishes, there's web portals whereby anybody can search our database and even download records to an Excel spreadsheet. And if you don't want to do that, you can visualize maps. If we've got photos associated with them, those will be up there too. And you can do a thing called fit to map and look just at a particular geographic area like Alachua County. But things that we have in Gainesville include blue and Nile tilapia, those pterygoplictes catfishes. We have these little platyfish, Zophophorus variatus. They're right outside my door here on campus. Is my screen still being shared? I'm pointing like I can be seen. But
yes, you can.
Okay, good. And quite a few more like Hoplosternum, which is another type of armored catfish from a different family. So the further north you move up in the peninsula, the fewer introduced established species you see from foreign countries. And the reason that tends to be, I think, is that a lot of the stuff, the ornamentals that are coming into the pet trade, come from tropical regions. And so you move away from those population centers where the most of the introductions are probably happening, and you move into colder climes. Those two things combined mean you see less non-indigenous species from tropical areas of the world, the things that come through the ornamental fish trade. But we do have a solid 12 species from other parts of the United States that are introduced into Florida, and they're having their own impacts. Things like the flathead catfish over in the Panhandle, and that's a whole other story in itself. That's part of those 49.
And I just want to say I dropped the link for the specified catalog into the chat. So
fantastic. That's great. Yeah, and you can search common names now on that web portal as well. So, and a lot of people, when I was on Instagram for a while and I was talking to species fishers and so forth, they told me that they used that web portal to find records of non-native fishes and go out and catch them, because they're interested, kind of like birders are, in seeing a great diversity of birds. They want to catch as many species as they can.
We have about 3 more minutes and we have a lot of questions. I'm sorry if we can't get to your question. Here's a quick one. Do people fish for swamp eels, or what's the deal with the swamp eel?
Ooh, there's a lot of interesting literature on the swamp eels now that I don't know. So swamp eels are part of that subset of fishes that seem to have taken the food pathway into the United States. I would include in that probably the brown hoplo, that other species of armored catfish I also refer to as hoplosternum. That thing's not here because it was attractive and interesting and people wanted it for their aquaria. And it is well regarded as a food fish in areas of its native range. So I think that's ditto for swamp eels. And it may also be the case for the one species of snakehead that's established here, which is the bullseye snakehead. I don't know how you would fish for swamp eels. Wading birds are great at it. There's a new paper just came out that sort of a citizen science paper, which is fantastic, right? And I know there's citizen science events in association with Earth Day, but it can be all year round, right? Where people photographing wading birds, getting these crystal clear, high definition photographs of wading birds eating fish. And they got new distribution records of swamp eels based upon wading birds catching them. These swamp eels, they burrow deep, deep, deep into mud, into root masses. I think they're strongly nocturnal. They're covered in mucus. That picture I showed where our friend Kristen was holding one, that's an incredible achievement. It's almost impossible. They are so covered in mucus. Somewhere Zach Randall's out there laughing because photographing those things was impossible. I don't know how you would fish for them. I just don't.
Well, we're going to try and maybe get a few quickly. So if you've got some rapid fire answers to some of
Yeah,
these,
I'll do better. Sorry.
Right? No, we're loving this, but we want to make sure we keep to the time, and we can go maybe a minute over. What, if anything, is being done to prevent non-indigenous fish introductions in Florida?
Education, hopefully education. And I think we need to partner better with the pet stores and the aquarium stores and so forth. And I think those people want to partner too. So it needs to be made clear to people when they take a fish home, how big it's going to get. I think the good aquarium stores do that. I think they probably all do that. And then that they be told that they have the option to bring it back, right? So we don't need people dumping these things. You need to bring it back to the outlet that you bought it from.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I was hoping you were going to say you need to partner with education more there, but you left me hanging.
We could develop something together, Chelsea. That'd be great.
All right, yeah, more of this, please. Real quick Rob, what's your favorite fish that's found in the fresh waters of Florida? We'll end with a good one there and make you choose.
I can't. All right, I'll pick one because I do think it's lovely, and it's a native, and it's called the flagfin shiner. And it's near and dear to my heart because I remember the first time I collected it, we were out trying to collect snakes in the Torreya State Park area just for fun, my friend Kenny Crisco and I, and we saw these fish in a really shallow riffle of clear water in the steephead habitat there, and we didn't have any way to capture them. And I remember we used a snake hook and my t-shirt to make it improvised saying, and we call it flagfin shiners out there. And they're just gorgeous. Zach has, he has the best photo of flagfin shiners.
Nice. We got some cheers for flagfish in the chat there.
Flagfin shiner. Flagfish are awesome too. Very colorful, very patriotic looking, but this is a different creature. Yeah.
All right. Any more from your end, Sadie?
Not at the moment.
I think we'll end it there. We got a few that are unanswered, but I think there's some long answers, and I want to make sure we stick with the time. And it's been so awesome to have Rob here, and thank you, Sadie, for being an awesome partner in Science on Tap. Thank everyone for watching. And
I do want to quickly jump in and say I'm going to put the link for our survey that we really hope that you'll take in the chat and in each of the Facebook Live feeds. But if you're in Zoom, it should also pop up for you when you're done. If you would take just the 5 minutes it takes to fill that out, we'd really appreciate your feedback, and be honest and let us know how we can make these as great as possible. Thank you.
And if I could, one more thing, I just want to say concerning our good friends at the University Press of Florida, this is a great time to buy books. They're having wonderful sales. We need to support our presses. I'm not talking necessarily about our book. We don't make any money on it, but the press does, and they need to make some money on it. And they have a lot of great titles, and you will never regret buying a book. I really don't think you will. And we all got time to read right now, we hope, right?
And yep, and that code was fishes. So there you have it. Get a deal.
And I do want to jump in. We had one quick question. Someone said, is the recording available? And it might take us a couple of days, but we'll get this recording posted so you can come rewatch it if you really loved it, or share it with your friends.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks Rob.
Folks.
Have a great evening.
Bye.